Thank you for joining us for today's Dental Board of California meeting. I'm Dr. Alan Felsenfeld, and I'm the president of the board. Today is Friday, August 26, 2022. This board meeting is being held in person with additional public and member participation through Webex. For those of you who wish to participate online, please log on to the Webex website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via the telephone conference and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to this meeting. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comment shortly. For individuals participating via Webex, when called upon, the moderator will give the individual permission to unmute themselves, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed by the chair. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with the testimony already provided, please just state your name and or association and that you are in support of any comments that previously provided. I would now like the DCA moderator to please explain how public comment will be taken during the meeting.
This is the moderator of the meeting. For the purposes of today's meeting, when the board president opens public comment, members of the public who would like to provide public comment at our DCA location, Sacramento, can approach the table and microphone at the front of the room. For those joining us via Webex, we will be utilizing the Webex question and answer feature to facilitate public comment. We'll also be using the raise hand feature as well. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, we'll then open the question and answer feature to turn on. The members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right-hand corner of your Webex screen. I will then call on the individual and give the individual permission to unmute their microphone. That individual will be given 2 minutes to speak to make their comments. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, the individual's microphone will be muted and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being only used as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or board members. Questions submitted using this feature will not be answered. When making your comment, please make sure that the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. And that is the end of my instructions, so I'll turn it back over to the board president.
Thank you, DCA moderator. As yesterday, Dr. James Yu, our vice president, will be calling the roll for attendance and voting, as Dr. Molina, our board secretary, could not physically be present for this meeting, but is joining us today via Webex. Good morning, Dr. Molina. I would like to call the
Good morning, Dr. Felsenfeld.
Thank you. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask Dr. Yu to please call the roll.
Good morning. This is Dr. James Yu, board vice president, and now I'll call the roll. Chan?
Chan, here.
Chan, present. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, here.
Felsenfeld, present. Forge? Forge, absent. McKenzie?
McKenzie, here.
McKenzie, present. Medina?
Medina, here.
Medina, present. Molina? Molina, present. Morrow?
Morrow, present.
Morrow, present. Olagi?
Olagi, present.
Olagi, present. Pacheco?
Pacheco, present.
Pacheco, present. And you, present. We have a forum.
Call Lorraine and absent.
Lorraine is absent, yes.
Thank you. Just to keep it on the record.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the rest of our agenda for this meeting, and agenda item number 19 is the President's report on closed session items. I will give that report, Agenda item number 19A, the board voted to deny the conscious sedation permit for licensee SS. Agenda item 19B, the board voted to appoint an interim executive officer. An announcement regarding who the appointed person is will be made after approval is received from the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. There are no action items for the board to consider, so we will move on to agenda item number 20. The Dental Assisting Council meeting report. Ms. Fowler, if you'll come up and tell us what went on, we'd be happy to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Friday. I forget what day it is. Okay, so good morning. My name is Jerry Fowler. I'm chair of the Dental Assisting Council. I will be presenting the Dental Assisting Council meeting report for the meeting held yesterday, August 25th, 2022. Agenda item 3, the meeting minutes for the May 12th, 2022 DAC meeting were approved with no revisions. The motion passed and it was carried. Agenda item 4, update on dental assisting examination statistics, was presented by Ricky Parks, dental assisting program analyst. Agenda item 5, update on dental assisting licensing statistics, was presented by Paige Regali, licensing and examination unit manager. Agenda item 6, update on the status of surveys regarding registered dental assistant and extended functions, administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, was presented by myself, Jerry Fowler, chair of Dental Assisting Council. During the November 2021 Dental Assisting Council meeting, the Council established a 2-member working group which included Jerry Fowler, Council Chair, and Tracy Reed-Espinoza, Council Vice Chair, to create a relevant quantitative and qualitative survey questions to be sent to supervising RDA-EF dentists, as well as RDA-EFs, to assess the importance of adding local anesthesia and nitrous oxide to the RDA-EF scope of practice. On January 2022, the Council delegated authority of the working group to work with the Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, to finalize the surveys and bring them back at a future Dental Assisting Council meeting. On May 2022, the Dental Assisting Council meeting, the Council reviewed the survey, which included the OPES recommendations, and delegated authority to the 2-member working group to work with OPES to finalize the surveys to distribute to stakeholders. Then on August 8th, 2022, the working group and the board staff met with OPES to discuss the finalization and distribution of the survey. OPES stated that they would administer the survey to dentists and RDAS via SurveyMonkey. They would monitor the survey responses, provide follow-up, analyze the results, and provide the board with a memo summarizing the results. It was determined that the anticipated release date of the survey will be early September 2022. The survey will be open for licensees for a period of 1 month, after which OPES will compile and analyze the data and provide a summary of the results that they anticipate to be completed in advance of the November Council meeting. Agenda item 7, presentation from the Dental Assisting National Board regarding dental auxiliary certifications for board licensure, that was given by Paige Regali, licensing and examination unit manager. Mrs. Regali presented background information regarding the programs and courses that are regulated by the California Dental Board. She stated that the board staff had identified inefficiencies in the regulations for approving, inspecting, and evaluating RDA and RDA-EF educational programs and courses. There are also concerns regarding recent trends of a decline of licensed dental auxiliaries, which impacts consumer access to dental care. The board staff requested that the Dental Assisting Council to review dental auxiliary education requirements to determine if legislative or regulatory amendments may improve the dental auxiliary licensure, education, and/or licensure portability and program course approval. Catherine Landsberg from the Dental Assisting National Board, which offers numerous national dental assisting certifications, provided a presentation to the Dental Assisting Council to inform the Council on potential dental auxiliary licensure improvements regarding education and certification of dental auxiliary applicants. Following a discussion, action was taken by the Council to create a two-member working group consisting of board member Ms. Joanne Pacheco and one other Council member to be announced later, to review these issues, research dental auxiliary certification and education requirements in other states, and review the applicable statutes and regulations regarding board approval of RDA and RDAEF educational programs and courses for potential amendments. The motion passed and it was carried. And lastly, Agenda Item 8, discussion and possible action to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907, and repeal Business Professions Code Section 1752.6, relating to registered dental hygienist application requirements to obtain a registered dental assistant license and permitted duties. Ricky Parks, Dental Assisting Program Analyst, presented this agenda item. The board is seeing an increase in the number of registered dental hygienist licensees who are applying for RDA licensure. In order to clarify requirements and reduce RDA license redundancies, the board staff proposed the following statutory changes. BPC Section 1752.1A, Paragraph 4, the board may license as a registered dental assistant a person who files an application and submits written evidence satisfactory to the board, individuals with current and active California licensure as a registered dental hygienist, registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, or registered hygienist in extended functions. Satisfactory performance on the registered dental assistant combined written and law and ethics examination administered by the board, and completion of a course in basic life support offered by an instructor approved by the American Red Cross or the American Heart Association, or any other course approved by the board as equivalent. Business and Professions Code Section 1752.1D, each applicant applying for a registered dental assisting licensure pursuant to paragraphs 1 through 3 of Subdivision A shall provide evidence of having successfully completed within 5 years prior to application all of the board-approved courses. Radiation safety, the length and content which shall be governed by the applicable board regulations. Corona polishing as a condition of licensure, the length and content which shall be governed by applicable board regulations. A 2-hour course in the Dental Practice Act, 8-hour course in infection control, and a course in basic life support offered by an instructor approved by the American Red Cross or American Heart Association, or any other course approved by the board as equivalent. Business Professions Code Section 1752.4B, a registered dental assistant may only approve the following additional duties after successfully completing a board-approved registered dental assistant educational program or a board-approved course in those duties. Removal of excess cement with an ultrasonic scaler from supragingival surfaces of teeth undergoing orthodontic treatment. The allowable duties of an orthodontic assistant permit holder as specified in Section 1750.3, registered dental assistant may not be required to complete further instruction in the duties of placing ligature ties and archoirs, removing orthodontic bands, and removing excess cement from tooth surfaces with hand instrument. The allowable duties of a dental sedation assistant permit holder as specified in Section 1750.5, and the application of pit and fissure sealants. Except as provided in Section 1777, the supervising licensed dentist shall be responsible for ensuring completion of courses to perform additional duties and determining whether each authorized procedure performed by a registered dental assistant should be performed under general or direct supervision. Business Professions Code Section 1907, the following functions may be performed by a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, or registered dental hygienist in extended functions, in addition to those authorized pursuant to Sections 1908 and 1914 inclusive. All functions that may be performed by a registered dental assistant pursuant to Subdivision A of Section 1752. B, additional duties specified in Subdivision B of Section 1752.4 upon successful completion of a registered dental assistant educational program or course approved by the Dental Board of California and those duties. And C, all persons holding a license as a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, or a registered dental hygienist in extended functions as of December 31st, 2005, are authorized to perform the duties of a registered dental assistant specified in this chapter. All persons issued a license as a registered dental hygienist in alternative practice, or registered dental hygienist in extended functions on or after January 1st, 2006, shall qualify for and receive a registered dental assistant license in accordance with paragraph 4 of Subdivision A, Section 1752.1, prior to the performance of the duties of a registered dental assistant specified in this chapter. So, that's pretty long-winded. Okay. Lost my page. Okay, so the council took action to recommend to the board to include in the board's next sunset review report a recommendation to amend Business and Professions Codes Section 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907, and repeal Section 1752.6 to clarify the application requirements of a registered dental hygienist to obtain an RDA license and education requirements to perform additional RDA duties, and to work with the Dental Hygiene Board to ensure that the proposal has no unintended consequences. The board likely will see this legislative proposal at the November meeting. This motion passed and it was carried, and that concludes my August 26, 2022 Dental Assistant Council report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fowler. Are there any board member comments on the report? And Dr. Molina, you can raise your hand. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'll have someone helping me with that if you have a question. Dr. Morrow is up. Dr. Morrow. Microphone, please.
I would just like to take this opportunity to publicly express my appreciation and my thanks for your dedication to conducting the business of the Dental Assisting Council. It is not an easy task. I'm sure it consumes a lot of your time, and I think I think the rest of the board is very appreciative of what you do and your dedication to that task. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. I see Dr. Molina's hand is up. Dr. Molina?
I was actually trying to put it down. Is it up?
Oh, yeah. You don't need to speak right now, Dr. Molina?
No, I'm gonna lower. Is it lower now?
Okay. You're waving at us. That's all. It's moving. Try lowering it. You push it again, it will probably go off. That's my thought.
Right now, it says lower hand.
Hit it.
So my hand is not up.
Your hand is not up, except it is up here. I'll call on you. If you have nothing to say, you can say it's not there. You can work on that, though, okay? Oh, it's down now, Dr. Molina.
Okay,
okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later or not, as the case may be. All right. Is there any other board member discussion on Ms. Fowler's report on the Dental Assisting Council? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment? Dr. Witcher's approaching the microphone.
Dr. Bruce Witcher on behalf of CDA and also myself. Thank you for that report, and thanks to staff for Ms. Parks and Ms. Bergali for preparing that report. I don't think any Dental Assisting Council meeting yet has not had some sort of report on licensing figures and success rates on the RDA exam. So just to recap a little bit, because those figures were available, for 2021-22, again, just through July of this year, the pass rate on the RDA written was 69%. The prior year, it was 71%. This is first-time pass rate. In 2019-2020, it was 67%. It wasn't long ago then the pass rate was 55%, or in that range. And this was sort of independent of educational pathway. It didn't matter whether it was OJT, or it was program, CODA approved, or otherwise. So I thought I would call that to your attention. The other question is, where are we with RDA applications and approvals, and how many licenses have been granted? We have 4-year statistics for that in your packet going back to 18-19. We have to remember there was an effect from COVID in 2021 and even up into 2022, so that has affected things. But if you look, applications approved have been pretty consistently for the last 4 years in the area of 2,500 to 2,600. The licenses issued are much lower, however, and we see that the last couple of years, it was about 30% of applicants did not receive a license. So, if an application is approved and approval is granted, there are several things that have to happen. First of all, they have to schedule the exam, they have to take the exam, they have to get the results back to the board, and the approval of the exam results and a license has to be issued. So there's obviously a gap there. And I know our our acting AEO is working on this, because in her report she mentioned that we needed additional staff, and they were working on licensing approvals. So this is probably, and Ms. Montez has worked very hard on the dental assisting issues, occupational analysis, exam development, all that. So I know she's acutely aware of this. But I think it's kind of interesting to see that the final step between the approval of the application and the granting of the license seems to be where the log jam is. And so I hear a lot about going back and reconfiguring dental assisting and looking at efficiencies, and that's always a good thing to do. But a cautionary note, I'll just tell you, this is a personal anecdote here. In 1997, the president of Cal Amos asked me, he said, there's a meeting of the Dental Assisting Task Force. Go find out what this is about, Witcher. Little did I know that was going to begin a 25-year odyssey through the various legislative and regulatory things that went on with dental assisting, including several rounds through the state legislature, several rounds of rulemaking, and probably 10 years of working on the dental assistant rulemaking package, which has been developed and is out there. So there's been just an awful lot of work done on this already, and if somebody can do better, I wish them the best. But I have to admit to a certain amount of skepticism just because of the difficulty of the subject material. It's incredibly complicated. And I was speaking to Ms. Bruggeman, our Leg-Reg analyst, and he said, if you think 501 was bad, just wait till you see dental assisting. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Witcher, for the warning. We appreciate that. Is there any other in-person public comment on the, Mr. Lum is coming up. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, President Felsenfeld and Assistant Executive Officer Tracy Montez and board members. I'm Anthony Lum, Executive Officer of the Dental Hygiene Board. I just wanted to say thank you for taking my comments that were made yesterday to heart. We look forward to more communication and working with you on the changes to the statutory language that affects the registered dental assistants. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lum. Is there any other in-person public comment? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you, moderator, and thank you, Ms. Fowler. You may be seated. We now move on to item 21A, the Diversion Program Report and Statistics. I'm going to ask Bernal Vaba, our special investigator, to present this item. Good morning, Mr. Vaba. Microphone on?
Test.
There you go, sir. Much better. We can hear you now.
Morning. Special Investigator Bernie Baba, and I will be presenting Agenda Item 21A, Diversion Program Report and Statistics. Quick point of reference, under Quarter 4, it should read April, May, June, not January, February, March. Apologies for that. Moving on, this memo provides the statistics for the quarter ending on June 30th, 2022. These statistics reflect the participant activity within the diversion program. Currently, there are 7 participants in the program. Of the 7 current participants, there are 2 referrals, 4 probation referrals, and 1 enforcement referral. The next diversion meeting is scheduled for October 5th, 2022, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there any board member discussion on Mr. Baba's report? I actually do have a question, Mr. Baba. I've been kind of watching this over the many years that I've kind of sat in the back of the board and even now. And the number of people in the program is down to 7, you're saying? And we used to be in the 15, 16 range. I think that's maybe a good thing, but do you have any thoughts on why it's coming down? Are people not coming into the program and there's still a need, or have we gotten the message out?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I would have to look into that. When I took over as the diversion manager, I think the participant number was around 10 or 9, so it's been low for quite some time. But I'd have to come back to you with.
That's fine. It's just a philosophical. I guess it's a good thing we don't have a lot of people who need diversion if that's in fact where they are. I think Tracy wants to say something.
I would. I did have the opportunity to participate in the last diversion meeting with Bernal, and we found that was kind of a trend across our other boards, our healing art boards, that they have fewer participants. There was some discussion, and really nothing substantive came out of it other than numbers are low. So it is consistent.
One can hope because the need is not there. All right, Mr. Vaba, thank you. I think we have another report coming up for you, though. Oh, do we have any? The board member discussion was not there. Do we have any in-person comments from people in the audience? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, would you be kind enough to open up the lines for public comment, please?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item number 21B for Mr. Vaba. Again, discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of a Diversion Evaluation Committee member. Mr. Vaba, please.
Thank you. Recently, one of our DEC members retired at the end of April 2022, and there was a need to fill the vacancy. Dr. Thomas Spec responded to the DEC recruitment notice posted on the Dental Board of California's website. Dr. Spec previously served on the DEC in 2007 to 2018. Dr. Spec was interviewed and has established that he has the experience and knowledge in the evaluation and management of persons who have an alcohol or drug abuse impairment, and comes highly recommended by members of the DEC. Action requested is to accept or reject the recommendation to appoint Dr. Spec to the Diversion Evaluation Committee.
Thank you. Let's start with board member comments on the application of Dr. Spec. Seeing none, Dr. Molina, nothing. All right. At that point, we need a motion to either accept or reject the application. Dr. Chan?
I move that we accept the recommendation to appoint Dr. Spec to the DEC.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dr. McKenzie, I've got Medina. We'll give Ms. Medina one for today. All right, so Ms. Medina seconded that. Thank you. Is there any further board member discussion before we take the vote? Is there any in-person comments from the public? Seeing none approaching, are there any public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this motion, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Yu, would you please state the motion, call the roll, and take the vote, please?
Okay, the motion is to accept the recommendation to appoint Dr. Spec to the deck. Now I take the roll. Chen?
Chan, aye.
Chen, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge? Forge, absent. Lorraine? Lorraine, absent. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, yes. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. And you, aye. Motion passed.
Thank you, Dr. Yu, and congratulations to Dr. Spec. We wish him well. We now move on to item number 21C, the Controlled Substance Utilization Review and Evaluation System Report. Mr. Blonyan, if you'll come forward and talk with us, we'd appreciate that.
Good morning to the board again. The Cures report is enclosed in the board materials. There's nothing really dramatic in it that shows trends as far as the Cures report goes, is that there's really nothing happening in high numbers or frequently with this. We get the occasional person who's having trouble adjusting to the changes of AB 2789, but really there's nothing significant or frequent with the Cures program right now.
Okay. Everyone's happy with Cures is what you're suggesting?
Everybody's using it, and occasional issues, but nothing significant.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other board member comments on the Cures program? Dr. Chan.
Good morning. Would it be of value to gather statistics on how many are retiring their DEAs?
So you're talking about the certificate or the license issued by the DEA federal agency, and how many are coming down monthly or quarterly or annually. We have the total number, I believe, of DEA licenses that we can get. It's not easy. We did that a couple years ago, and it took some time to get. But we're seeing lots of people surrendering them, or they don't want to deal with it anymore. I don't have a number to back that up, but I've taken a number of phone calls to that effect. So,
and the question is whether or not it's of value to us to see the marketplace.
That's up to you all to see.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other board comments on the report? Seeing none, are there any in-person public comments on Mr. Bobbitt's report on the Cures system? Cures. Seeing none of those, are there public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines again for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Blonyan, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item number 22A, the general anesthesia and conscious sedation permit evaluation statistics. I'll ask Jessica Olney, who is the anesthesia unit manager, to come join us to present the item.
Good morning, Dr. Felsenfeld and members of the board. My name's Jessica Only. I'm the Anesthesia Unit Manager with the Dental Board of California, and I'll be presenting Agenda Item 22A, which is the General Anesthesia and Conscious Sedation Evaluation Statistics. This agenda item includes charts and tables which break down the results of the on-site inspection and evaluations completed in fiscal years 21, 22, and also the 3 prior fiscal years, as well as a breakdown of the current evaluator pool by Northern and Southern California regions. No action is required on this item as it is informational, and I am available if you have any questions.
You're not going to say much more about that, are you? You're done. Okay, thank you. Any board member comments about the data on anesthesia? Dr. Chan.
Good morning, Jessica.
Good morning.
As we move forward with 501, and part of the thrust of the whole issue is to gather statistics on side adventures or adverse effects. How do we compare these statistics from the old model to the new model?
Well, we haven't begun the new model. The regulations were just approved last week, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Many of the permit holders are still able to continue to practice under the existing terms of their permit because they were able to renew prior to December 31st of 2022. So it's going to be an ongoing process. We are going to start seeing new permit holders applying or people renewing who are going to have to follow the new regulations. So it's going to be difficult to kind of split those up. Staff are going to have to be mindful of when folks were either issued a permit or when they renewed their permit. So. And
then as a body of data, we may be comparing different things on the old model and the new model, right?
We could. If you look at the regulations, there were changes to the equipment, the standards for the on-site inspection, but it didn't change significantly. So I don't know that we'll see a huge difference. There were changes to updating terms, for example, changing requirements on records, but overall, the items remain very similar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tracy would like to make a comment, please.
Yeah, I think it may be difficult to do direct comparisons. It's like apples and oranges if I understand this. And again, I'm new to it, but certainly we can track data and get a better understanding of where we might see complications given how the permits are issued and broken down. Does that make sense, Jessica, a little bit?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
It's definitely going to be a learning curve.
If I can just get into the fray of it a little myself, if you look at this, if we see complications going down, we could theoretically say it's because of the new rules. If we see complications going up, hopefully never, but we can say it's because of the new rules. We don't really know. Even then, you're not going to know any of that. So the data sets, being what they are what they are, and really they just exist. And we have to almost have to look at gross numbers to get a sense of what's going on, not trying to compare whether we're doing better under 501 or not. 501 is here. That's what we're using. That's the rule. And presumably is to make it safer, but inherently it wasn't all that unsafe to start with, so we'd like to keep those numbers as low as possible regardless. So, right. Dr. Morrow.
Thank you. In your report for 2022, the year, you've identified 6 permittees that were permits that were canceled because of noncompliance. What were the issues of noncompliance involved in these cancellations?
Noncompliance is when a permit holder does not reply to the notification that they're required to be inspected or required to have their on-site inspection. We send letters by certified mail to permit holders and also regular mail to let them know that they need to be inspected by a certain date. If they do not respond by that date and have that inspection, then their permits are canceled.
Okay. So in essence, they're canceled by default?
Yes.
Not because of any wrongdoing?
Other than not completing the required on-site inspection.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Molina, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, so I just have a point of clarification. So earlier, they were talking about existing permit holders. So with the new requirements, are the existing permit holders going to be grandfathered in with additional requirements, or how? It's not that clear to me how that's working.
Dr. Molina, would you be kind enough to hold on with that question? It's an excellent one, and I have it also. We all have it. And I think we're going to be talking about 501 in the next item once this item is completed, and I think that question would be better answered under those circumstances because you're asking how we're going to implement 501. Are you okay with that, Sonia?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. So is there any, did we do in-person comment? We did not. Is there any in-person comment on the report that we have so far from people here? There is none. Is there any board member, is there any participants via Webex who would like to make a public comment? DCA moderator, please open the lines to facilitate public comment on this report.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you. Yes, do that. Dr. Molina, I see your hand is up. Is that still up from before? And we'll hold on to that for a moment until Ms. Olney finishes the next part of this. It's down now. Okay,
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Molina.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Olney, let's talk a little bit about item 22B, and that is an update regarding the board implementation of SB 501, which is Glazer Chapter 929 Statutes of 2018.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld.
No problem.
These next couple agenda items will be a little more lengthy. Senate Bill 501, which became effective January 1st of 2019, made significant changes to the current general anesthesia, medical general anesthesia, conscious sedation, and oral conscious sedation for minors permits. Also introduced a new moderate sedation permit, pediatric minimal sedation permit, and pediatric endorsement, as well as monitoring requirements for patients under 13. To implement these changes, board staff worked with subject matter experts and legal counsel to develop proposed regulatory language, which was approved by the board in November of 2021. Board staff prepared the initial rulemaking, which was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for publication, which initiated a 45-day public comment period on December 31st, 2021. Public comment was received, as well as a request for a public hearing, which was held on February 16th. On March 14th, a special meeting was held where the board took action to accept staff recommendations on the comments received, approve the modified text and documents added to the rulemaking file, and directed staff to complete the rulemaking process. On May 2nd, the rulemaking package was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, but the package was withdrawn on June 14th after discussions with OAL staff identified substantial changes needed to approve the package. The board held a meeting on June 28, 2022, where action was taken to approve the modified text. The rulemaking file of the second modified text was submitted to OAL on July 21st, 2022, and the regulations were approved on August 16th. On August 23rd, an email announcement was sent to licensees and interested parties, which included links to the new websites for each of the permits, and board staff are ready to begin accepting applications this week. No action is also requested on this item, as the data provided is informational. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. We will start with Dr. Molina. Would you like to ask your question now?
Yes, so my question was, so going forward, the licensees that had a permit, are they grandfathered in with additional requirements? Do they have to start from scratch? How, and complete all those cases, and how is that going to work?
So the existing general anesthesia and medical general anesthesia permit holders will continue with their existing permits. If they are going to administer deep sedation or general anesthesia to patients under 7, they will have to apply for a pediatric endorsement. That will require that they submit 20 cases to demonstrate that they have administered deep sedation or anesthesia to patients under 7. I'm assuming that they will get those cases from existing patients that they have seen. Residents who are newly graduating from programs would have seen those patients as part of their education. The conscious sedation permit holders, when SB 501 was written, were not grandfathered into the new moderate sedation permits. That was a big reason why we made the push to let the permit holders renew before the end of 2021 so that they would have time to meet the new requirements for the moderate sedation permit. The permit will require...
I'm sorry, is that the moderate sedation for children under 7, or is that for adults as well?
So the moderate sedation is a new permit altogether. It will require a pediatric endorsement under 2 scenarios. The first is if they administer anesthesia, or excuse me, if they administer moderate sedation to patients under 13, and a second if they administer to patients under 7. So these are this is a new permit and new pediatric endorsements.
So if they only do adult, they don't have to do any further training, correct?
Well, if they only do adults, they don't have to apply for the pediatric endorsement. They would apply for the moderate sedation permit. There is a certification of moderate sedation training form that their program will need to complete. There is no stipulation on when the training needed to be completed, so it doesn't say within the last year, within the last 5 years.
So they still have to fill out a new application and then get the new certification.
Correct. They do have to apply for the new permit. They are not automatically transferred to the permit.
Okay, that's what I was not clear, if they were going to grandfather in, or if they had to start from new. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Molina. Is there any other board? Dr. Chan, I saw your name. Yes.
The main driver for 501 was the death of a baby, and I'm really sensitive to that. And moving forward with the pediatric endorsement and the pediatric minimal sedation are affirmative moves for us. But as we had a previous board report on adverse effects or adverse results, we saw a greater number in the geriatric population. So maybe germane to 501, but the request is we should keep an eye on the trend to seeing more of the adverse effects in geriatrics and what we can do to mitigate those numbers.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. Any other board member comments on Ms. Olney's report? Seeing none, are there any in-person comments? Dr. Witcher's approaching the microphone. Thank you, sir.
Just a couple of comments. I'd really like to thank board staff for getting this done. It was a huge lift and a big project, and these things are never perfect right out of the box. Jessica didn't mention this, but if you go on the website, you'll see that initially, until the breeze improvements are finalized, you have to submit the applications by mail. That will get fixed eventually, but for now, people have to understand that that's going to be the route. And Jessica has also informed me that she will have staff available to answer questions, which will be extremely helpful because we know there's going to be a lot of questions. And I think it's much better if they're answered by her department rather than by somebody like myself. So I really appreciate that. A little bit of a sidebar here. I think one of the areas that's the least clear is the application for the moderate sedation endorsement, because there's a number of choices you have to make in terms of age groups. In other words, are you going to treat only under 7? There's a box you can check where you indicate you're going to treat both under 13 and under 7, or only under 13. I think maybe what this gets around to is the pediatric endorsement requests that you submit 20 cases. So think about what age group you're going to treat and submit the cases that support your application. So if you're going to treat under 7, then you're going to submit cases under 7. Now, based on the outcome study that the board put out last year, I would just remind everybody that the 7 to 12-year-old age group had pretty good outcomes. We had a couple of hospitalizations and only 1 death. And so that's the area where I think we have the least risk exposure. I mean, you know, there is a certain amount of inherent risk in doing anesthesia and sedation. You have to remember some of these were probably sick kids treated in inpatient settings, ambulatory care centers, and other things where there may have been multiple providers involved, and yet they still succumbed. So it's not a simple thing. But anyway, I think I think most of us who do this for a living, Dr. Felsenfeld and Dr. Chen and myself, may I continue?
You're not being cut off. That's, I think, someone's phone is ringing.
Okay. I wasn't sure if my 2 minutes
Sorry,
were
it was a 30-second mark.
You have actually more than 2 minutes here if you'd like to have it.
Thank you. Now I've lost my train of thought.
You were talking about...
getting back to age groups. I think that most of us who do this for a living would agree that if you're qualified to treat 7 and under, you're certainly qualified to treat under 13. So if I were submitting an application, I would submit 20 cases under 7 and call it good for under 13, but that's not my determination to make. But I think the original... You know, when I was speaking to the people who put this bill together, that was the original legislative intent. Of course, if you wanted to verify that, you might have to go back to the author. But I think that just from a practical standpoint and based on our outcome studies, I think if you're qualified for under 7, you're certainly qualified for under 13, because anybody who's done this knows that that age group is where the challenges really are. Okay, so that's what I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Witcher. Yes, Tracy would like to speak.
Yes, if I may, because you opened the door. Jessica, would you, not to put you on the spot, but just share a little bit. We know that this went into effect on the 16th. They were signed, and the documents were posted, and a number of things happened last week. Could you just kind of summarize where we're at in terms of things being processed and so forth, the communications that are out there?
Sure, I'd love to. The internet team was able to create new websites for each of the permits. Those websites include the applications. I'm happy to say that I think they're very clear instructions, that Tara was very helpful in creating those with us. They explain that the forms will need to be submitted by mail initially although we have been working with the BREEZE team to implement the changes in the BREEZE system, we want to make sure that the BREEZE system is working correctly as far as the printing of certificates and licenses that go out to the permit holders. We also needed to wait until the regulations were approved so that we would have those application questions that will be posted when somebody goes online and applies. So that information was all posted on the 23rd. We have been getting many emails and phone calls. The staff in the anesthesia unit have been fielding all of those. I'm happy to say that they respond to every email, you know, usually first thing in the morning when I check our email box, it's empty because they've already responded to them by 8:30, you know, and they constantly monitor that email box. Excuse me. Just for everyone's information, the email address is au.program@dca.ca.gov. And again, we have staff who are ready and available to answer the questions that anyone might have. I was in the office last on Wednesday. We have not received any applications yet. Of course, that was just the first 24 hours, but I do expect that we're going to be getting those very soon, and the staff are ready to begin processing them.
Thank you. Where are we here? Do we have any other in-person? Dr. Witcher, you may be seated. Thank you. And do we have any other in-person comments? Seeing none, do we have any people who would like to make comments, public comments via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for the public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. And if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 22C, which is a discussion and possible action on the legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1646.9 and repeal Business and Professions Code Section 2079 regarding physician and surgeon general anesthesia permit. I'm going to ask Ms. Alney to explain what's going on here and what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. Board staff have identified inconsistencies in the Dental Practice Act, specifically Business and Professions Code 1646.9, which is the issuance of general anesthesia permits to physicians and surgeons. And staff have requested that the board review these inconsistencies to determine whether statutory amendments are necessary to clarify language, specifically for the osteopathic physicians and surgeons who are licensed by the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. Business and Professions Code 1646.9 authorizes physicians and surgeons licensed pursuant to Chapter 5, which commences with Section 2000, to administer deep sedation or general anesthesia in the office of a licensed dentist for dental patients, and requires that they obtain a general anesthesia permit issued by the board. Since Business Professions Code Division 2, Chapter 5 includes physicians and surgeons licensed by the medical board, as well as osteopathic physicians and surgeons licensed by the Osteopathic Medical Board, Business and Professions Code 1646.9 currently authorizes physicians and wow, I think I repeated the same question twice, or the same line. My apologies. Again, it authorizes for both physicians licensed by the medical board and the Osteopathic Medical Board. The application requires that the applicant submit the application to the Medical Board of California showing that the applicant has successfully completed a postgraduate residency training program in anesthesiology, which is specified in Business and Professions Code 2079. However, osteopathic physicians and surgeons are licensed by the Osteopathic Medical Board and are not under the jurisdiction of the Medical Board of California. Osteopathic physicians and surgeons are required to submit certification of at least completion of 12 months of an ACGME postgraduate training or an American Osteopathic Association rotating internship. Board staff believe that this subdivision, believe that 1646.9 subdivision A should be clarified in its application to physicians and surgeons licensed either by the Medical Board of California or the Osteopathic Medical Board, and recommend that the subdivision A be amended to clarify the language. For example, the language should state by the Medical Board of California or the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. There also does not appear to be a need to require the Medical Board of California to review the applicant's evidence showing completion of an ACGME recognized postgraduate residency training program, as board staff can look the information up on the program's website. Staff recommend repealing Business and Professions Code 2079 as requiring an osteopathic physician and surgeon to submit their application to the Medical Board of California could create an unnecessary or big barrier to the general anesthesia permitting by the board. Attached is the legislative proposal, which is on page 127 of your meeting material. And the action requested is that the board is asked to discuss and consider the above described recommendation if the board agrees with the proposal, with the proposed amendments to Business and Professions Code 1646.9 and repeal Business and Professions Code 2079. The board is asked to consider a motion to include in the board's sunset review a recommendation to the California State Legislature to amend to amend Business and Professions Code section 1646.9 to clarify the ability of an osteopathic medical board licensed physician and surgeon to apply for a board-issued general anesthesia permit and repeal Business and Professions Code 2079 to remove the Medical Board of California review of a physician and surgeon's licensed general anesthesia permit application and related documents. And hopefully that made sense to you, and my apologies for the error, but I'm available for any questions you might have.
All right. Is there board amendment comment? I see Dr. Chan out of the corner of my eye.
So the schism between the medical board and the osteopathic medicine, and just for clarification, I understood that in California, even if you had a degree for osteopathic medicine, you could still use an MD. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't believe that's correct any longer. I think at one point the DOs from a long time ago could convert to MDs by whatever form they had to fill out. But I think at this point they have to be DOs. But
okay.
That's not totally relevant to what we're talking about today.
Well, it is in that do ODs still have to go through general anesthesia training in hospitals?
All right. May I just for a moment provide some information, because this is where I used to live and still do a little bit. Osteopathic physicians are absolutely the same as medical. MDs and DOs have the exact same privileging in California, and please, counsel, if you know better than that, let me know. But they can do everything that physicians with MDs can do. And they do, if they want to be a specialist, have to go through specialist training. And there are many DOs who are head and neck surgeons, anesthesiologists, cardiologists, and the like, neurosurgeons, everything. So do they have to go through something special is what you're asking? They have, well, if they want to be an anesthesiologist, they have to do an anesthesia residency. I have some objections, and I've expressed that earlier, to the concept of rotating internship. There is no such thing. And I would suggest if we have to put language in, we have language that say that they are entitled to be called an anesthesiologist if they've gone through an ACGME anesthesia residency, which, by the way, at this point, all of the osteopaths go through ACGME, not AOA approved. However, if we need to put in or an AOA approved residency in anesthesiology, that would qualify them to be anesthesiologists. Anything less than that does not exist. We don't want someone with 12 months coming into a dental office doing anesthesia. That may relate back to the old days of the dental anesthesiologist. That was something that was there too. Okay. Tara, Ms. Welch, sorry.
All right, to clarify the discussion, on page 127 of your meeting materials, the legislative proposal would amend Business and Professions Code 1646.9, subdivision B, paragraph 3, to include anesthesia training through an American Osteopathic Association rotating internship. And this, you know, you'd have to submit evidence of successful completion of this internship. This was included based upon the osteopath regulations, which is found in California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 1611, subsection E. That regulation also provides this either or postgraduate residency training recognized by ACGME or the rotating internship under AOA. So I'm highlighting this because we were just trying to craft this and provide for osteopathic physicians and surgeons. Dr. Felsenfeld is recommending that we strike this addition because through his experience, he understands that anesthesia training through an AOA rotating internship does not exist.
That's correct.
So what he's recommending is striking the currently underlined language in subsection B, paragraph 3, last 2 lines is underlined anesthesia training through an American Osteopathic Association rotating internship. Should the California Legislature determine that that provision is actually necessary, they could add it back, but we just need to reflect in our meeting minutes why we're taking this provision out right now. Our understanding is that does not exist, so we wouldn't want to include it right now.
Nor does it qualify someone to be an anesthesiologist in 12 months when it's a 4-year program for everyone else. So that's even more important from a safety standpoint.
Okay, so I also have another amendment. So same paragraph, paragraph 3, 3rd line down, the proposal currently states, and this is existing law, the line begins with anesthesiology that is recognized by the American Council.
Where are you specifically? I'm sorry.
I'm on page 127 of the meeting materials.
All right, you're right here. Go ahead. It's still paragraph 3, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead again.
Line 3, beginning with anesthesiology that is recognized by the American Council on Graduate Medical. We need to change American to accreditation, and then remove and replace on with for, so that the title would read...
Current title of the ACGME.
Correct.
Okay.
The title would read Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education.
So let me suggest that what I'm doing, this is board member discussion at this point, so I'm going to propose the amendment, since staff I don't think can do that. I'm going to propose the amendment just as Ms. Welch has just offered, that we change the 3rd line to what was it again? Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, or we could say through anesthesia resident. We're going to eliminate that last piece and let it go with just ACGME. Here, let them add it in if they feel there's a problem with that. Yes, so we're going to eliminate anything after the word or before the word or, after the word or, sorry, and eliminate the word or, period after education, and it's changing the name. That's what the amendment is. We have a second on that from Dr. Chan. Is there any discussion on the amendment from the board? And I suspect we should open that. Yes, Ms. Welch.
So again, you want to take a motion on the amendment and then do a separate motion on the proposal.
From a parliamentary standpoint, we have to craft the resolution, so we're going to do that now. So the first thing we're going to do is have public comment on the amendment to eliminate everything, including the word or in that last sentence or 2, and changing the appropriate name to the ACGME. Is there any is there any other board comment on that? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on that? Seeing none. Is there any comment from people participating via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. We are now going to take a vote on the amendment to the proposed legislative language. Dr. Yu, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, yes. So the motion is to accept the amendment recommendation by Tara Welch.
No, the amendment as the board put together. Tara Welch cannot make amendments, we can. Just the amendment to the language as proposed.
Okay, Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye.
Welch? Noreen? McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes. Medina, I.
Molina, aye.
Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, I.
Pacheco, aye. You aye. Okay, motion passed.
Thank you. We now have before us discussion of the amended resolution to change the language as we've discussed and as was discussed by Ms. Olney. Is there any further board discussion on that? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on that? Seeing none, is there any Webex comment on that? The DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the lines for public comment via Webex?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon, located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Please do, thank you. We need a motion to accept the language. That's correct. All right, we do, well, we really, all right, we need a motion. I thought we had done that, actually. No, all right, we need a motion to accept the language as amended, not the amendment itself, but to accept the language. And Chan is saying yes to that?
Tara has a question.
Wait, Ms. Welsh is going to give us another thing here. Hang on.
I think you need a motion to adopt
Yes.
a recommendation to the legislature.
Okay, you're on page what, please?
Page 125.
Okay, 125.
Action requested. Third line down, the board is asked to consider a motion to include. We need all of that.
Okay, let's look at that. All right, that's correct. All right, thank you, and I apologize. We'll have to go back and do comments again once we have that done. My apologies. All right, we need a motion, and I can actually make that. I will like to make a motion on behalf of what we've been talking about, that we, where do we start that? Let's see. We'd like to include within the board's sunset review a recommendation to the California State Legislature to amend B&P Code Section 1646.9 to clarify the ability of OMBC licensed physicians and surgeons to apply for a board-issued general anesthesia permit and repeal B&P Section 2079 to remove the medical board MBC review of a physician and surgeon. And the amendment that we're going to suggest is that which we just approved. Okay, that's what my motion is. Thank you. Dr. Chan is seconding that. Is there any additional board comment on that? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on that? Seeing none, is there any WebEx public comment on that? DCA moderator, please facilitate public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you, yes. We're now ready to take a vote, and I will read the motion for the record once again. Thank you,
Okay.
just to be sure. It's a motion to include in the board's sunset review a recommendation to the California State Legislature to amend the Business and Professions Code Section 1646.9 to clarify the ability of OMBC licensed physicians and surgeons to apply for a board-issued general anesthesia permit and repeal Business and Professions Code Section 2079 to remove the MBC review of a physician and surgeon licensee's general anesthesia permit and application and related documentation. And we are talking about the amended motion, the amended language. Go ahead, Dr. Yu.
Okay, Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge? Absent. Loreen, absent. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, yes. Medina?
Medina, I.
Medina, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. You aye. And Morrow, aye. Yeah. Okay, motion passed.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. We can now move on, I believe, to, that was very complex and appreciate the, all the support. We are now looking to agenda item 22D. Once again, Ms. Olney, it's going to be a discussion and possible action on a legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1647.18, 1647.19, 1647.20, and 1724 regarding oral conscious sedation for adults certificate requirements. Ms. Olney, please.
Thank you again, Dr. Felsenfeld. While SB 501 made significant changes to the anesthesia and sedation permits issued by the board, it did not make changes to the oral conscious sedation for adults permits. To increase consumer protection, board staff have identified several areas in statute which need to be amended to conform with the changes made by SB 501, as well as remove an outdated pathway to qualify for the permit. Beginning on page 131 of the meeting material, you will find the proposed amendments to Business and Professions Code 1647.18, 1647.19, 1647.20, and 1724 to update the oral conscious sedation for adult statutes and repeal the outdated eligibility exemption. This includes the outdated definition of certification used in Business and Professions Code 1647.18, amend Business and Professions Code 1647.19 to conform with the statutory construction used in the GA, MS, and PMS statutes, which include updating the term conscious sedation to moderate sedation in subdivision A1 and 2, and remove minor oral conscious sedation certificate, which was repealed by SB 501 to administer adult oral conscious sedation, and update the terms of the expiration and renewal of the oral conscious sedation permit in subdivision B. This also includes amending Business and Professions Code 1647.20 to delete the outdated reference to the conscious sedation permit and replace it with the moderate sedation permit, revising the statute to require the dentist who desires to administer or order the administration of adult oral conscious sedation to apply to the board, revise the statutory construction used in the GA, MS, and PMS statutes to clarify that dentists hold an oral conscious sedation certificate, and repeal 1647.20D, as this pathway would allow a dentist to provide documentation of cases in the administration of oral conscious sedation that would have been performed at least 17 years ago, as this would not be in the best interest of consumer protection. We're also asking to amend Business and Professions Code 1724, the fee schedule, to correct subdivision R, which inadvertently referred to the oral conscious sedation permit rather than certificate. Attached is a legislative proposal which begins on page 135 of your media material, and I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, is there any board member comment on this? Seeing none right now, I think Ms. Welch would like to make some comments about and suggestions for the legislation, for the legislative part of it. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. I've got some...
Heard the microphone.
I've got some proposed amendments to the proposal. So I'm on page 135. In section 1647.19, subdivision A, paragraph 1, that last line on the page, it currently says, or obtains an oral conscious sedation for adult patients, next page certificate. I recommend changing the title of the certificate because this is just so darn wordy. I think it would be easier for all if we could change the title of the certificate to insert on that last line. So it would say, or obtains an adult oral conscious sedation, strike for adult patients, and then just have certificate. So it would be adult oral conscious sedation certificate. I would recommend making that same change to the title of the certificate to paragraph 2 on page 136, the title on the third line, and subdivision B, lines 3 through 4. No change is necessary to section 1647.20, as that only describes the administration of oral conscious sedation for adult patients, not the title of the certificate. And then when you get to page 138, this is section 1724, subdivision R. The title is already there. This is Adult Oral Conscious Sedation Certificate. That way, all of this, the title will now be.
So your suggestion is sort of for consistency of title,
Correct.
consistent with what our titles are now in the bills mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's currently recommended to be changed in the proposal in 1724R, and I believe that the SB 501 regulation already calls this Adult Oral Conscious Sedation Certificate. So this would be consistent with the SB 501 regulation as well.
So language changes for consistency, not substantive.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any discussion about that? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the language changes as just stated, where we change it to Adult Oral Conscious Sedation Certificate throughout the legislative area. In 3 areas, you said there were 3 areas?
Yeah, to be clear, it's section 1647.19, subdivision A, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and subdivision B.
Consider me channeled. That's what I just said. Thank you, Ms. Welch. We'll be happy to consider that. Dr. Chan, did you want to second that? Or, all right, that's fine. We have a second on the motion. Is there any board discussion about the changes with the designated areas and for consistency of language? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the changes that are recommended? And I'm not going to forget the whole thing. Seeing none, is there any, I'm sorry, Dr. Witcher, are you coming up? I have to apologize to you, Dr. Witcher. As much as we've been friends forever and ever, you also only have 2 minutes.
This won't take that long.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm not missing something, that we've adopted the new terminology of moderate sedation for this permit.
Really, we're going to accept that as a comment and go on. Thank you, Dr. Witcher. That was less than 2 minutes. You made it up. We appreciate that. Is there any other in-person public comment on this amendment to the legislative language? No. Is there any Webex participant public comment? We'd ask the DCA moderator to open the microphones for public comment, please.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. And it looks like we do have a hand raised from Kathleen Marcus. One moment while I get my timer back up. Kathleen, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right,
Just a very,
unmuted.
okay, just a very quick question. Obviously, this language change makes perfect sense. My only concern is whether the change in name of the permit will result in the same delay in promulgation of required forms for application for the permit that we saw with the moderate and the pediatric minimum.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have your name in front of me, but thank you for your comment. We cannot get into debate and answer the question, but we've heard it. Thank you. Is there any other public comment on the amendments?
Yes, this is the moderator. I have another request for comment from Perry Klockvold. And Perry, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, you are unmuted.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
We are,
Yes,
Dr.
we can hear
Cluckervold.
you.
Good morning.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to comment, same as Dr. Witcher. The consistency of this amendment change makes sense, adult oral conscious sedation certificate. However, to be consistent with the other changes that have been made for the moderate sedation permit, I just wonder if moderate should be used. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cluckervold. Is there any other public comment on the amendments before we vote on the actual resolution or the actual, we have more? Wait, Ms. Welch, I think, would like to make a clarifying statement. Yes? No? Let's wait till public comment is done. Is there any other public comment then? Thank you.
This is the moderator. There's no further requests for public
Right.
comment. Would
Thank
you like
you.
me to close
Then
that?
that's fine. And Ms. Welch, you want to clarify some information for us? That'd be great.
With respect to the moderate sedation permit issue, the moderate sedation statutes are begin at Business and Professions Code Section 1647. That's what the legislature recently changed, conscious sedation to moderate sedation. What we're talking about right now is the permit under 1647.18, oral conscious sedation for adult patients. So we cannot change really the oral conscious sedation permit. I mean, we're not recommending that because the legislature didn't make that change. They changed the conscious sedation to moderate. We're just making some additional tweaks to the oral conscious sedation for adult patients permit, or rather certificate. If perhaps CDA wants oral conscious sedation changed for some reason to be titled moderate sedation, they could, but we're not recommending that. We're just changing the existing article, oral conscious sedation for adult patients, which is separate from the moderate sedation provisions. With respect to these changes to the title, SB 501 did not change oral conscious sedation for adult patients, so it's not the same delay or gap in coverage or problem issuing those certificates. We're just recommending some tweaks that potentially wouldn't go into effect until January 1 of 2025. Yeah, so there's no anticipated delay with issuing these types of certificates because there's no overhaul of the certificate or its requirements, like substantive, such as what happened with the moderate sedation and pediatric endorsements under SB 501. That's it.
So this is basically a modification of existing language, existing certificates calling instead of permits and the like. So it doesn't change, it's not introducing anything new. We are ready to take a vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the entire resolution, as it were. All right, so let's, Dr. Yu, would you call the vote on the amendment to change those words that we did?
Okay, Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Ford? Absent. Noreen? Absent. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, yes. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. And you, aye. Motion passed.
The motion passes. We now have before us, thank you, Dr. Yu. We now have before us, help me out with where it is in the 133. under action, I got that part. Okay, so we now have, on the bottom of page 133 in the book, we have, the board is asked to discuss and consider the above described legislative proposal as amended. If the board approves the legislative proposal, it's asked to include it in the Sunset Review Report to amend Business and Professions Codes 1647-18, 47-19, and 47-20, as well as 17-24 to clarify the certificate requirements. So we are now going to vote on that, and we'll call the vote on that. Wait, we need a motion, a second, then we need public comment. I'll give a motion. We need a motion. I think I just did that. Are you, Dr. Hughes, making the motion? Who's seconding it?
I'll second.
Dr. Chan, again, thank you. All right, now, is there any other board comment on what we're doing? Seeing none. Is there any in-person public comment on what we're doing? Seeing none. Are there public comments from individuals participating via Webex? PCA moderator, please facilitate comments for the public via Webex.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. Right, and I have a thank you from Kathleen Marcus. I'm not sure if she wants to also speak. But I can request to unmute her microphone and give her 2 minutes. So, oh, nope. Okay, great. Just thank you.
Before, I think. Okay. So we are good, moderator?
Yep, no requests for comments.
All right, thank you very much. We'll continue on here. So we now have before us, Dr. Yu, do you want to read the motion as we have it, please?
Sure. The motion is to include in the board's next Sunset Review Report a recommendation to amend Business and Professional Code Sedation 1647.18, 1647.19, and 1647.20 and 1724 to clarify the oral conscious sedation for adult patient certificate requirements.
Thank you, sir. Take the vote, please.
Okay, Chan?
Chan, aye.
Chan, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge? Absent. Noreen? Absent. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, yes. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Olaki?
Olagi, yes.
Olaki, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. You, aye. Motion passed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yu. The chair has the right to declare a break and watch it. We're going to have one. 10:45 coming back, and we'll see you then. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue with our meeting now, and I move on to agenda item number 23, discussion and possible action on a legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1701.5 and 1804 regarding fictitious name permit and dental corporation name requirements. Paige Regali, Ms. Regali, if you'll, the licensing and examination manager, if you'll present this item for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld, and good morning, board members. My name is Paige Regali, and today I will be presenting agenda item number 23, which begins on page 139 of your meeting materials. Just as a note, a second revised memo was distributed and is posted to the board's website as well. Pursuant to Business and Professions Code 1701.5, the board issues FNPs, or fictitious name permits, to dentists and dental corporations who wish to engage in dental practice under a fictitious name at a specified location. The board currently receives around 800 FMP applications per year submitted by dentists as individuals, a pair of dentists, or association, partnership, or group of 3 or more dentists and dental corporations. The sole purpose of the FMP is to inform the public which individuals or business entity is conducting business under the assumed or fictitious name. The permit does not reserve the name, provide rights to the use of the name, or prevent another party from using the name. There are several requirements to obtain the FMP, and these requirements can be found on page 140 of the original meeting materials or on page 2 of the amended memo. Board staff have identified problems with the requirements in current process of applying for an FMP. Board staff also received numerous questions and complaints regarding the eligibility criteria for the FMP. To alleviate further confusion and avoid deficiencies with the application process, board staff are requesting clarification of the requirements for an FMP, which are described on page 4 to 7 of the amended memo. If amendments are made to clarify BPC section 1701.5, staff would like similar revisions made to Business and Professions Code section 1804 to clarify the dental corporation names. BPC 1804 requires the name of a dental corporation and any name or names which it may be rendering professional services to contain and be restricted to the name or last name of one or more of the present, prospective, or former shareholders, and include the words dental corporation or something denoting corporate existence, unless otherwise authorized by an FMP issued pursuant to BPC section 1701.5. As the FMP is outlined solely in statute, board staff propose amending BPC section 1701.5 to resolve the issues and to make conforming changes to BPC section 1804. These amendments will benefit licensees, consumers, and board staff by better identifying the dentists practicing under the FMP, clarifying the requirements, and making the application and renewal process more efficient. Staff is requesting that the board discuss and consider the above described legislative proposal. If the board approves of the legislative proposal, the board is asked to include in the board's next sunset review report a recommendation to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1701.5 and 1804 to clarify the fictitious name permit application process and dental corporation name requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Regali. Is there any board comment or questions about the proposed changes? Yes, Dr. Chan.
This has been a really fascinating discussion because there's a lot of permutations that can come up. So some of the shorter ones that I have questions on is when you have itinerants, that's considered a contract dentist, but if they have a fictitious name and they're going from office to office to office, do they go under the host fictitious name or their own?
So the fictitious name is issued to a specific location. So as one of the requirements, it states that the dentist or group or association, the persons applying for the fictitious name indicate the place or establishment where the applicant or applicants practice. So it's meant to be issued to a specific office location to identify the practice or the people who are practicing at that location. So it's not issued to the individual and it doesn't follow the individual.
So it's the brick and mortar then?
Correct.
And yet part of the thrust for the fictitious name permit is for accountability.
Correct, and I believe Tara had a
Ms.
comment.
Welch would like to comment.
So Paige is absolutely correct that the permit is issued to specified applicants, so that's a named dentist, group of dentists, or a dental corporation. However, this proposal, my page is not numbered here. If you look at the proposal, page 2 at the bottom, new proposed subdivision I, this would require additions or departures of dentists engaged in practice under the fictitious name to be reported to the board. So I think this would get at Dr. Chan's concern that there may be contracting dentists moving around. The dentists who are practicing under the name would also have to be identified to the board, not just the person holding the permit at the location.
So the question is, with itinerants that move from, let's talk about anesthesia, itinerants that may have a group with a fictitious name because they're doing it under a fictitious name as an itinerant group going from practice? Do they have to do it under their own?
I don't know what an itinerant is. That's, I mean, it's not identified in statute. It may be a...
Go ahead, Dr. Chan, explain that to you.
When you have a specialist like an anesthesiologist that goes from practice to practice to practice, it doesn't have a brick and mortar, and yet may be a group that has a fictitious name. How does that?
I don't know how they could operate in, I mean, traveling. There has to be a location identified with the permit. So if they're just wandering about, I don't see how the board could issue a permit for a location where someone's not actually practicing, or multiple locations if they own or practice under the name at multiple locations. That has to be identified in the permit. So I'm not sure how to address this question in terms of this actual permit. I mean, do you need to talk about perhaps a mobile permit that we don't currently have, or?
I think in the Bay Area, there's not just the Bay Area, there's a lot of office. They hire some independent contractor specialists and then work in their group. And those specialists maybe they work for multiple offices. They go from office to office just to do some of to see some of the patients.
Right. So in that, for those independent contractors, if they're engaged in practice under the fictitious name permit at the location, they would have to be reported to the board. They're not going to be part of the permit itself, though.
Okay. The second permutation that comes to question is, what about teledentistry or telehealth?
This is just for brick and mortar. I mean, I believe that there are separate teledentistry or telehealth provisions under the Business and Professions Code.
Okay, because the subgroup of that is if telehealth does come underneath there, how does, for example, the schools, if they provide telehealth diagnosis, how does one of the schools identify under a corporation? That may not apply, but it does bring up a question. You have a fictitious name, University of California.
Well, I think the schools, they have separate exemptions that are discussed in other parts of the code, for residents, obtaining some type of dentist license, and I'm not completely familiar with all of the exemptions, but in terms of practicing as a dentist or dental corporation under the FNP, that's all this covers. It doesn't cover schools where there are other separate provisions.
This may require me talking offline.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. Is there any other discussion on the second revised item number 23? Seeing none, we would like to see if someone would like to make a motion that this be accepted. And the motion would be, as is listed on the back page of 8 of 8.
Your motion.
All right. What is that, sir? What's the motion going to be?
We include in the board's next sunset review report a recommendation to amend Business and Business Code Section 1701.5 and 1804 to clarify the fictitious name permit application process and dental corporation name requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Medina? A second. All right. Do we have any further board discussion on this motion? Are there any in-person public comments on the motion? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, please facilitate public comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. We now have before us agenda item number 23. And Dr. Yu, if you'll be kind enough to read the motion again and take the roll.
Okay, the motion is to include in the board's next sunset review report. Okay, the motion is to include in the board's next sunset review report a recommendation to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1701.5 and 1804 to clarify the fictitious name permit application process and dental corporation name requirements. Okay, now I call the roll.
Thank you.
Chen?
Chan, aye.
Chen, aye. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, aye.
Felsenfeld, aye. Ford? Absent. Noreen? Absent. McKenzie? Yes. McKenzie, yes. Medina?
Medina, aye.
Medina, aye. Molina?
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow?
Morrow, aye.
Morrow, aye. Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Olagi, yes. Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. And you, aye. Motion passed.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. We now move on to agenda item number 24A. Thank you, Ms. Regali. 24A, the 2022 tentative legislative calendar. I'm going to ask David Bruggeman, our legislative and regulatory specialist, to present this agenda item. Good morning, Mr. Bruggeman.
Hello, President Felsenfeld and board members. The calendars for the legislative session can be found starting on page 150, of your meeting materials. Basically, we are in the very final stages of the legislative session for this year. The legislature has until the 31st of this month to pass any and all bills currently pending. And then the governor would have 30 days from the date that those bills are presented to him, effectively by the end of September, to sign those approved bills into law or to issue his veto. In terms of the bills that the legislature has been tracking, that the board staff have been tracking, there were bills that in the May meeting that the board took positions on. And of the 5 bills that the board took positions on, 4 of those bills are no longer active in the legislature. The only bill that is still active in the legislative process the board has taken a position on is SB 1443. This is the bill that would extend the sunset date for our board from January 1st of 2024 to January 1st of 2025. It is currently with the Assembly. We would anticipate that it will be passed by the 31st, but it has not been passed as of today. There are several other bills that the board staff have been tracking that are still active. Of those, most are currently in the final process for being presented to the governor. There are a couple that still need to be reviewed by the legislature and finally approved. Of those bills, there are 3 that have some tangential effect on the board. There is Assembly Bill 2145, which would allow certain categories of dental hygienists to provide dental services in long-term care facilities. There is SB 731, which extends the arrest record relief provisions, so that means that certain arrests would no longer be disclosable for applicants for licensure. And then SB 1495 makes some non-substantive changes to the Practice Act that reflects that the Healthcare Access and Information Agency now operates under that name rather than its preceding name. Again, those bills are still in process, but we would anticipate that they would be passed and most likely signed by the governor by the end of September. At this point, that covers my update. Of the 27 items that are on the agenda, there's only 8 bills still active. I'll briefly summarize those items. If the board members have any questions on those pieces of legislation or other bills, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Is there any board member questions for Mr. Bruggeman? Cover two items here is what you're saying. Yes, the calendar and the active bills.
I do apologize.
No,
Yes,
that's
I
all
have
right. That's quite all right.
covered
So
all of
are there
item
questions of either of those items? Then that's correct. I still see no board member questions. Is there any in-person public comment? Seeing none of that, are there public comments from individuals participating via Webex? DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the lines for public comment on either the calendar or our positions on the bills that are still active?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you. Please do that. Okay, Mr. Bruggeman, agenda item 25, discussion of prospective legislative proposals. Would you like to discuss those?
Yes, as indicated in the memo that's on page 547, stakeholders are encouraged to submit proposals in writing to the board before, during, or after board meetings for possible consideration by the board at a future meeting. We've already discussed several legislative proposals during the course of this meeting. To my knowledge, there are no other proposals being brought before the board at this time.
So that takes care of that. Is there any board member discussion on the fact that there's nothing there? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment on the fact that there are no bills? And seeing none of that, DCA moderator, please open the lines to see if there's any public comment from people participating via Webex.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your Webex screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. And before we leave this, I think Tracy wanted to make a comment about this.
Yes, I just wanted to share that the former interim executive officer did request that this remain on the agenda as per board feedback to just again show transparency that the board is open to any comments from stakeholders, the public, et cetera, on possible legislative proposals. So this again is just kind of an item reminding people that they're welcome to bring any thoughts or proposals to the board's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Bruggeman, your crisp efficiency is not unnoted.
I appreciate that,
I think we're done, unless you have something else you want to talk about. All right, we're good. We're going to move on to item number 26, discussion and possible action regarding 2023 meeting dates. I'm going to ask Tracy to take the lead on this.
Okay. So on page 548 of the meeting materials, the very last page, we have proposed board meeting dates for you to determine, or select, I should say, and then we would also like to possibly consider locations. We need to do this in advance because we need to schedule hearing rooms and various WebEx resources and so forth. And so we have dates that board staff have proposed here, and we'll start with February. And we have two dates. We'll look at February 9th and 10th. These dates, again, are selected to be consistent with prior dates from each year. This is about the time that the board typically meets. And so let's start with February 9th and 10th of 2023. Any concerns? Does that look good? Okay, so we can select that. And we don't need to do a motion, do we, Kara, on all this? Or do we at some point?
No, you don't.
Okay.
But I would request that you update the public and me, quite honestly, whether or not the October 7, 2022 meeting is going forward. That's currently on the board's website, and I think the board was holding that to discuss the sunset review report, but since the legislature is delaying the board's sunset review for a year, it sounds like that meeting is not necessary.
Correct, and we do have that with our OIS team to have that removed. So there will be no October 2022 meeting. The next meeting of the board will be in November, board meeting. And then we will start in 2023 with our February 9 and 10. Then the next one would be proposed May 18th and 19th, 2023, and that coincides with a CDA conference. And I have been told that that is a popular date. And to also have that meeting in Anaheim, which is where the conference will be held.
So I have a conflict on May 18th and 19th.
Okay. Excuse me. Any other conflicts? Do we want to look at another date, or does the board as a majority select the 18th and the 19th because of the conference? Are you comfortable with that, Ms. McKenzie? Okay. Okay, so we'll stay with May 18th and 19th, 2023. We will do that location in Anaheim. Next will be a year approximately from now, August 17th and 18th, 2023 is the first set of dates proposed. Any conflict with that? None? Okay, we will accept that date. And then finally, we have November 9th and 10th. We're doing it a little earlier to avoid other board meetings and, of course, our Thanksgiving holiday. We like those dates. Okay. What I'd like to do now is go back and propose some locations. We know we're meeting in, and these would be tentative with the exception of May. This coming November, we will be meeting in Sacramento. I'd like to propose in February that we also meet in Sacramento. May would be Anaheim. August would potentially be San Diego. And November would be back in Sacramento. Now, depending upon how the legislation goes on Webex, virtual options, we may need to move November to the Bay Area to be consistent with codes. But I'd like to just propose at least to pin down the February, May, and August. So again, February, Sacramento, May, Anaheim, August, San Diego, and November, tentatively Sacramento. Any concerns? Okay, so those would be the board meeting dates. The other date that we would like you to consider is to reserve Friday, October 6, 2023, for a special meeting to review the draft sunset report. Friday, October 6, 2023. And again, that would be a special meeting to review the draft sunset report. Yes. Sacramento. It would be in Sacramento. Yes. And we would like these meetings to be in person for our board members to the extent that we can accommodate your schedules. Any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We are out of agenda items, which brings us to the end of our meeting. I want to thank Dr. Yu for helping out with the attendance and voting roll calls. I want to thank our moderator for facilitating public comment, our board members for being diligent in what they've done, and particularly our staff for working as hard as they always do to prevent us from getting into trouble and present us with great information upon which to work. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.